welcome back to the Happy Horse Nutrition Podcast. And I'm very happy to say that we have Orla back today. Welcome back, Orla.
Oh, hi, Nero.
I know that you have got lots of questions for me today because we have caught up a few times and you keep telling me that you have lots of questions. So I'm very glad that you have been able to come back, and I reckon we just get into it.
Cool. I've been sitting on these questions since December, so they've been rattling around in my brain. Over Christmas, going to dive straight into it, I went and bought straw for my little ponies, well, for my horses, because they went out they had their Christmas break. They got morbidly obese. It was awful. I brought them back in, got a bale of straw. Everything was going fine. Everyone was happy. They were eating it. I went away for 10 days. And being the lovely person I am, I didn't want to put any more extra work on Matt. And I was like, yep, don't worry about them. They'll be fine. They can just eat straw and whatever nothingness they have in the paddock. And surprise, surprise. And I came back, I went, oh, Bravo's manure is a little bit loose. And then was like, oh no, just ignore that. Put it in the back of your brain, and went out about 2 hours later. I was like, oh, Bravo's now got diarrhea. Fantastic. So I took a photo of this straight away, sent it to you, and I was like, I have a podcast episode. Because I was like, every part of my being wanted to run to the van and get one of the products that I know helps with diarrhea. And I was like, no, Orla, you know what to do. Don't go and put anything down his gut. Just put him out in a paddock.
Yeah.
So I thought this would be good for you to explain in case anyone else has done what I've done and
Yes.
doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. I was chatting to a gorgeous lady yesterday, and her horse has actually got diarrhea, nothing related to straw or this conversation, but we were actually looking at its microbiome and talking about what to do with this particular horse. And she's like, oh, it's just so fascinating. And I wish it wasn't my horse.
Yep.
So they have a wonderful way of teaching us things that we obviously need to learn. But yeah, it was really interesting. So I've been more and more over the last 5 years have been really aware of the impact that fibre diversity has on horses. And now when people say to me, what is the best hay to feed my horse? I say as many different hays as you can find. Like there is no one perfect hay. And in fact, you can't expect one species of plant to provide a horse's nutrient requirements. So there's the whole nutrition side of it. But then there's something that, and I think a lot of it we just don't understand yet, and it's what you saw is when you limit their fibre source right down to one, and particularly when you limit it down to straw, and straw doesn't have a whole lot of much in it other than a lot of lignified fibre. So the fibre, I guess, is quite different to what we would normally think of for hay that we're feeding the horses, because as soon as lignin, so lignin is the structural stuff that wood is made out of, and it's essentially what makes the plant stand upright. So the lignin attaches to the other fibres and gives them structural strength. But once lignin attaches to something, it's indigestible. So when you're feeding all straw, you've got lots and lots of fibre in the diet, but a lot of it is indigestible. And I can't explain to you why that then leads to diarrhea. I don't really know, but my assumption would be that over that period of time, you will have shifted your microbiome to favour the ones that are doing the work of fermenting the straw. And a lot of bacteria, I would imagine, and this is a good question for Dr. Belinda, is that because straw is so hard to ferment, I think a lot of microbes will just go, you know what, couldn't be bothered. And they'll just check out because it's too much work for them,
Yeah.
right? So I think, and if it would be fascinating to have a look at in hindsight, is what was his microbiome before he went onto straw, then what was the microbiome when he had diarrhea, and now what is the microbiome now that you've allowed him back out on pasture and he's gone around? Because am I right? As soon as you got more different fibres into him, so he was allowed back out on pasture, it just resolved itself.
Yeah. Within like 24 hours, like 12 hours, big difference. 24 hours, pretty much back to normal. 48 hours.
Yeah, wow.
But the funny thing is, so it was the three of them. It was the quarter horse, the stock horse, and the pony. So the stock horse, he was like starting to get diarrhea. The quarter horse was, he was all right. A little bit loose. Pony, perfectly fine. Not a bother to her. I was like, you're my problem.
It's interesting, isn't it? And see, they would have all started out in a slightly different place.
Yeah.
And, ponies' metabolism is different, and possibly the way that they interact with the microbes in the gut, because it's not, what we're really starting to understand is that the microbes don't just live in the gut in this essentially plastic container of the gut and not interact with the host. The host and the microbes are constantly interacting. So, there's got to be some difference there between them. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that the pony was the one that was fine.
No surprise there.
And I know that we've mentioned this a few times, but it just blows my mind so much, and we still don't really understand it very well. But every single horse has a different blueprint for what their microbiome is going to look like, because their mother gives it to them when they're in utero. And it's not that she gives it to them when they're born and they come into contact with her feces. She actually gives it to them in utero, as in tells them this one's okay, this one's not, this one's okay, this one's not. And so your 3 horses are going to have different blueprints, and therefore the way that their microbes interact with the food that they're getting is also going to be different. And we don't understand enough yet, or at least I personally don't understand enough yet to know what's really going on there. But we all know that when you've got horses that are going to be a little bit more sensitive to feed changes than not. So your stock horse, and he's a bit of a sensitive boy, isn't he?
No, he's actually pretty good. That's what surprised me. The more I thought about it, like the quarter horse, he is just a small hippo. He's disgusting. Puts on weight very easy, whereas Bravo's a lot easier to lose weight, like with fitness and diet restriction. Whereas I could take food completely away from the pony and from Duck, and they will not lose weight. So so Bravo's, I guess more sensitive, but I would never put him in the sensitive bracket, if that makes sense.
So to spread this out to relevance to other horses, it was really fascinating for me when I was in the US in December, how much discussion there was around free fecal water for horses.
Yeah.
And it's a massive problem over there. Anywhere where there was discussions about free fecal water, there was lots of people. And I've sort of noticed since I've come home, I'm like, wow, this really does get talked about a lot. And something that I think is relevant, and I say it now because every time I come across a horse that has got, persistent chronic diarrhea or free fecal water, the first thing I try is, well, let's just get more different fibres. What does that make sense in English? More different?
Yes.
Let's get some different fibres into that horse's diet so that they're not just relying on one forage source. So yours was pretty extreme because it just went down to straw, and straw.
Yeah.
The recommendation is no more than 50% straw in the diet. So it's kind of not surprising that they did it in that situation. But I guess when you've got them on, a really nice Timothy hay or a really nice Bermuda grass hay or any of what's some of our common hays, like a really nice ryegrass hay or something like that, that if you've just got them restricted down to one plant species, you're also restricting your diversity of your microbiome down, and then that seems to lead to a whole lot of issues. But one of them seems to be free fecal water, at least in my experience. So I would say to anyone who has a horse with free fecal water, try and do it slowly, but try and introduce additional forages into the diet first. So if you're on predominantly 1 or 2 different types of hay, so often people will be feeding some alfalfa or leucine alongside a grassy forage. But if you can, bring in additional grassy forages. So if you've got a horse, say for example, on teff hay and they're a laminitic, try and also bring in some Rhodes grass hay, some leucine hay, and any other hay or straw you can find that is safe from a non-structural carbohydrate content perspective. And podcast episode just came out explaining what non-structural carbohydrates are. So if you're not sure, and there's also an episode about laminitis to cover those 2 things off. But getting as many different types of forage into your horse's diet. And then if you can, also bringing in different fibres, so your beet pulps and copra meals and lupin hulls and things like that, so that you're just creating this fibre diversity, and see if that's what makes a difference.
I actually should add, when this all happened, I went and put Bravo back out, and then I kept Duck and Chips in the small yard with their straw. And so reintroduced the grass hay and the leucine mix, and then they also have like their mix of fibres in their feed. And within 24 hours, Duck was fine. Again, Chippy's no difference. So it was funny just to, and I felt really bad because, I had said to Matt, no, they'll be fine. And he's like, are you sure?
No, we all do these things at least once, and then we go, okay, that clearly didn't work. I won't do that again. So it was just,
No, we're going away for 4 days and they're going across the road and just go away.
This is just how committed you are to the Happy Horse Nutrition podcast, because
I know, just guinea pigs.
you're just creating situations so that we can talk about them.
Well, look, next time I'll call Belinda. I'm like, hey, I'm about to go and disrupt everything.
Yeah.
Let's do a trial.
Yeah, it would be really, really interesting. And I've had a look at a whole heap of microbiome analyses that have come through from Belinda, like from people who have sent microbiome analyses there and then have sent them to me to have a look at to see if we can figure out what to do with the diet. And a lot of the horses have got diarrhea and have been unable to be resolved. And it's so fascinating looking at the species of microbes in their hindgut and trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we feed to shift this? And sometimes, there's horses have got an antibiotic history, so there's a slightly different strategy there. Other times we don't really know why the horse has got diarrhea, but we've been bringing in lots of fibres, and it amazes me. Like in the couple of horses so far that we've had this really granular look at how quickly we can make a change to something that's been going on for years.
It's scary, isn't it? Very, very scary.
Cool though.
Yes, very cool. Humans, we everything we touch, we break. Yeah. Speaking of humans.
Hey, quick moment while you're listening. If feeding your horse ever feels like a puzzle that a toddler has been playing with missing or half-chewed pieces, you are exactly who we built My Happy Horse for. The app makes everything clear, simple, and tailored to your horse, so you always know when you're doing the right thing. Check it out at myhappy.horse or find it on the App Store. All right, back we go.
Next question. I was listening to Liz Owen's episode again and again and again. So that's episode 23 about guardianship of horses.
Yes.
So if anyone hasn't listened to it, listen to it. I love her, by the way. She's just so blunt and matter of fact. And I'd love to be in a room with her talking to someone who feeds terribly.
Yeah.
She's great. Anyway, she touched very, very briefly, and I don't think we've talked about this at all, about mixed species mills. And I hate them personally. And I thought just so many people I speak to, they don't know that their horse is getting a mixed species feed. They don't even know that there's such a thing as an equine dedicated feed mill. So I was hoping you could shed some light on that, please.
Explain that one. Yeah. So there's a few feed mills, and there's a lot of feed mills all around the world that are equine specific. And so they only make equine feed, but they're reasonably few and far between when you have a look at all of the feed mills in the world. So most of the feed mills make dairy, pig, poultry. They may make other sheep, other feeds for some, make feed for fish.
Liz mentioned rat something. I was like, oh,
God. So there's lots of different animals, all the zoo animals, but there's lots of different animals that need feed. And there's actually, from some perspectives, or from a lot of perspectives, there's benefits to having mixed species meals, because you can bring in a whole heap of ingredients and they're being used for lots of animal species, and they often buy in larger amounts of ingredients, so they've got that economy of scale. I know the feed company I work for in Japan, they make a lot of horse feed, but they make so much other feed that the horse feed is like this teeny tiny little bit of their business. So if that was all they were doing, then they wouldn't have the economies of scale to buy in the grain they do at the prices they buy it in and things like that. Where it becomes an issue is, and I know you know this all, but where it becomes an issue is in ruminant feeds, sometimes in poultry feed, and I don't know about the other weird, wonderful animal species, but there are medications that are either harmful or deadly to horses. So there's one or a couple of words that just give me the cold shivers, menensin or rumensin. So they're ionophores. They are used to modify the rumen. I remember learning about it back in undergrad, how it all worked. I've forgotten now because my brain just goes deadly. And they literally are deadly. So to monogastric animals, they are deadly. So the scariest part of a mixed species meal is if any of those medications accidentally end up in the horse feed, it will kill the horses that eat it. And I remember it was actually Liz Owens who told me, like, this was probably 20 years ago. She was standing by a truck that was unloading molasses, and she could hear like a crunchy sound, and she's thinking, what is that? And when they tested it, it was one of these ionophores that had been in the truck previously, and it was just that she was there and heard it. I've always remembered that, thinking, oh my goodness, it's so scary. So I mean, I've worked with so many feed mills over the years, and generally what we would do if it's a mixed species mill, we'd either have mixed species but zero medication. So they just do not have those medications and things that are harmful or deadly to horses on site, so they don't end up in the feed.
Mhm.
Or if they do have them, they have separate areas. So horse feed will be made over here, and the other feeds will be made over there. And the best situation is when you get a feed made in one of these mixed species mills, and then every batch of feed goes off to be tested for, especially the ionophores, to make sure that there's none in there.
Mhm.
And even with premixes, so one of the premix companies that we used to source a lot of premix from had medicated plant and non-medicated plant. But even the stuff coming out of the non-medicated plant, even though there was none of these materials there, we would still get that tested to go into then equine only mill to make sure that, like, just to be doubly sure that there was nothing in there that could harm the horses.
Yep.
So there is definitely risks involved, and I guess it comes down to, is it mixed species with harmful ingredients on site, or is it mixed species without harmful ingredients on site? And if they do have the potentially like if those ingredients get into a feed, if they do have them on site, how do they manage that?
And how does someone like me find that out?
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to is, how do you guarantee that there's not any of these ingredients ending up in your feeds?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just having a conversation with someone last week. I can't remember who it was now, but they were mixed species but zero medication. Oh, no, that's fine. If it's not even on site, then it's not a problem.
Yeah, cool. Because there's a funny story. There was a farm I went to visit, and I was explaining mixed equine dedicated milk, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I've heard this funny story going around that they ordered their yearling prep mix, and it was full of cat food, like the little star biscuits.
Yep.
And their face just dropped, and they're like, that was us.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, it's not a rumor. And they're like, no, that was also in a pallet of cat food.
Yeah. Well, and there's another level, I guess, is that, there's the feed mills that make their own feeds, and they can be, equine specific or mixed species. And then there's the contract manufacturing where a feed company will contract out to another company to get them to make their feed. And that's where those stories generally come from.
And how do you know if they're one of those?
You open up your bag of horse food and it's got cat food in it.
Great.
I mean, this is where knowing your manufacturers and trusting your manufacturers comes in. How much do you know about the manufacturer of your feed and their quality control systems, and things like, do they test? So one of the things that I've been really big on over the years is testing the mineral components coming into a feed, because it says it's magnesium oxide, but is it? And we've picked up a number of times when it hasn't been. I don't know what it is, but, it'll come back at 30-something% magnesium. I'm like, that's not magnesium oxide, or at least it's not pure magnesium oxide. Or, dicalcium phosphate that comes back at more than 30% calcium. You're like, that's not dicalcium phosphate. So, there's lots and lots, so much that goes into making good horse feed. Lots of testing.
Yes. All right. And then that leads into least cost recipes and set recipes. And again, a lot of people don't understand that. So if you could please also explain that and why.
Yes, I can explain that.
Thank you.
So the thing that's probably not really obvious about what I have done in the past 25 years is I've actually, and I know you know this very well, Orla, but I've actually spent a lot of time formulating feeds and supplements for feed and supplement companies all over the world, really. I absolutely love it. I got to do a feed formulation yesterday. I was in heaven. It was a really fun one too. So I love formulating, and if you talk to other formulating nutritionists, we're all a bit quirky and the same. It's
all
kind
a bit
of
on the
like
spectrum.
yeah. Yeah, quite likely. But there's a few ways. There's a few ways to formulate feeds. There's lots of software available to formulate feeds, but I find feed formulation software is so black box. You know, you put this in here, and then you get specifications out there, and you can't see what's happening really in the middle unless you pull them apart. So I built my own formulation software so that I can really see the nitty gritty of what is going on. But if you use the fancy formulation software, you can say to that software, these are the feed specifications I want. So let's say we're doing a broodmare feed and we want it to be 14 megajoules per kilogram of energy and 16.5% crude protein and have 12 grams per kilogram of calcium and 8 grams per kilogram of phosphorus, something like that. And then you'd have all your other nutrient specifications. But you can give it those nutrient specifications. You can say, these are the ingredients we have available at the moment at this cost. Please put together the ingredients and give me a formulation on the other side that will meet those or create those nutrient specifications for that feed. And I mean, it's very, very clever because it does all of the calculations and figures out. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, right? Like it's got all these pieces, and some have got energy, some have got protein, some have got calcium, and more calcium than phosphorus or more phosphorus than calcium. So it'll jigsaw all of these pieces together, and you can give it a cost that you're working to, or you can just say, just give it to me at the lowest cost. So if you've got, say, cottonseed meal, which is a common ingredient in Australia, and soybean meal, and cottonseed meal is a much lower price than soybean meal, but they have similar protein contents, it will pull that lower cost ingredient in order to add enough crude protein because you've told it to give you the least cost. So least costing is that. You get the nutrient levels that you require, but they use the lowest cost ingredients to get you there, versus the way that I will formulate, and I've actually never ever done a least cost formulation.
That's good to hear.
So I could have just made all of that up, and I don't really know what I'm talking about. But the way I like to formulate for horses, and there's a reason that I'll explain why, but the way I like to formulate for horses is to say, okay, these are all of the ingredients we have available. These are the nutrient specifications. This is the best way to get there because I know that it's going to give us the best nutrient balance for horses. So in that cottonseed versus soybean example, the cottonseed will give us the crude protein, but what we don't understand well enough in order to do least cost formulation in horses is the building blocks of protein, all the amino acids. We don't understand the availability of the amino acids in different feed ingredients well enough to do a good job of least cost formulating. So the least cost formulations will go, well, you need 16.5% crude protein, use that. But what it doesn't see in say, cottonseed meal is that 60% of the lysine, which is the most limiting amino acid, so the one that the horses will run out of first, it doesn't see that's not available to the horse because we simply don't have that information properly available for horses. Whereas chicken nutritionists, so your broilers, the chickens that we eat, a lot of people think that you see those pictures of here's a meat chicken in the 1950s and 60s, and it's this scrawny little thing at I don't know how many weeks, and then you see them now at 8 weeks and they're massive and plump, and a lot of people think that's from hormones, and it absolutely isn't. There is no hormones used, at least in Australia. There is no hormones used in the production of those birds. What it is genetics and nutrition. So they've been able to breed them to grow really quickly, and then they know so much about the nutrition of them because they can study them so much. So instead of just looking at total lysine like we do in equine formulations, they're actually looking at available lysine and available methionine and threonine, and I think they were up to about 8 amino acids. There could be more now that they actually know the available levels of those amino acids in a whole bunch of different feedstuffs. So they can formulate to available amino acid content, whereas we're formulating to total lysine and crude protein. So when someone formulates like that, you get the crude protein content, you get the total lysine content, but a lot of that lysine is not available for digestion. And that's one example of where least cost formulating rations can come undone. And if you've got a horse that's not doing very much, so duck, not to pick on duck.
I'll pick on Hemis,
but
my little Lanwell.
So chunky quarter horse, and maintains his weight, and I'm assuming his muscle really well.
Very well.
And some of them do. So our popcorn is the same, just solid, chunky little things, and they don't need a lot of feed to maintain their condition. So if you had a least cost formulated, let's say, balancer pellet that did use lower quality protein, you're probably not going to notice the difference. Like it won't have that much of an impact on them. Whereas if you're feeding lactating brood mares, or you've got thoroughbreds in full race training, and you're giving them a feed that has got it's mainly the protein where it comes undone. So if you've got this low quality protein in because the feed's been created using least cost methods, you'll see, well, in brood mares, you'll definitely see a loss of muscle mass because they have to start using up their own protein reserves to give either milk or protein to their foal. And in working horses, and particularly in thoroughbreds, if you don't have enough good quality protein in their diet, they just don't build muscle. And they'll actually start to lose it as they get fitter because they're having to use up muscle protein for because protein's got so many jobs in the body. So if they can't find the amino acids they need in their diet, they go and start breaking down muscle mass so that they can sort of scavenge some of the amino acids that they're not getting in their diet.
Yeah.
So there's nothing for your everyday horse, and if a feed company can truly use that least cost formulation to keep the cost of their feed down, then it works okay. But most of the time, I don't ever formulate like that because I don't like to not see really what's going on inside formulations.
Well, where does it also come in then? Because going back another step, you're also going to have the cereal grains. So you might have barley, you might have corn, you might have this, you might have that. Where is that going to come in and affect the horse? Does it not?
One of the ways you can tell whether a feed, so if you're going, well, how do we know if a feed is least cost formulated or if it's formulated to a set recipe or a set list of ingredients, is just read the ingredient listing on the feed bag. So the ones that are made to a set recipe or a set list of ingredients, they'll be very specific about what ingredients are in the feed, whereas your least cost formulated ones will use more generic terms like cereal grains, or it might be cereal grains including, and they'll say vegetable protein meals or just protein meals. Sometimes like there'll be sort of more broad descriptions of ingredients so that they are able to legally change between different ingredients. So with your cereal grains, you'll change digestibility, you'll change starch content. So say they were changing between, I don't know, I mean, barley, wheat and corn, they're roughly similar in starch amount. They usually won't change from an oat to a barley, wheat or corn. But if they were changing, say, from a meal mix or a wheat bran pollard, some sort of wheat byproduct that's got like 1,000 names all around the world, brol and wheat feed, and there's lots and lots of different names. Could be a game we play, I think, to name every variation of wheat bran. But if they went from that to a grain, then it has a big impact on starch content in the feed. So if you're, happily feeding a horse that doesn't have any metabolic conditions and can have starch in the feed, and you're happily feeding a feed that all of a sudden, without you knowing, changes from predominantly meal mix type wheat byproduct to barley, you might go from 18% starch up to 30 or more percent starch, and you don't know. So it can have a big impact, but I guess it would have a big impact, but mostly my concerns are more around the protein quality.
Well, can you touch on, you used to always just explain leucine very well, lysine and leucine and that relationship. Can you explain that? Because whenever I explain it to people, I blow people's minds. So it has to come from you.
So leucine's a cool amino acid. So it's one of the essential amino acids. And if you ever see like branched chain amino acids or, BCAA paste, and they get used a lot in recovery pastes and things like that, or muscle building supplements. And if anyone does any kind of human muscle building, body building, you'll see these branched chain amino acids or BCAAs sold for muscle building. And the reason that is, and leucine is one of those. So leucine, isoleucine, and valine are the 3 branched chain amino acids. But leucine is really special in amongst all of the amino acids. So there's about 20 of them. But it's special because it is the only one that can switch muscle building on and off. So when it gets to a certain level in the horse's blood, the muscles go, oh, we're on. And then they'll start looking for all the other amino acid building blocks to build up. And then when its level drops back down again, I assume that turns off. I think it's the mTOR pathway from memory. But yeah, so your protein quality does play into that a lot as well. So if you're feeding lots of protein but you don't have enough leucine, then muscle building will never switch on. And you wonder why, we're feeding this horse and it's got 16% protein in its feed, but we're not actually getting any muscle building. It's because you're never actually switching that muscle building process on. And this is where sometimes we'll, in yearlings, in sales preparation or in horses that we're really trying to put muscle on for some reason, so horses that have had back injuries and we need to build up their top line to strengthen it up quickly, you can use whey protein concentrate because it's super high in leucine. So a little bit of that and then in with a high quality soybean or something and you've got heaps of leucine, you'll turn the muscle building process on, and then you're also providing all of the other amino acid building blocks to build the muscle. Because you have to, it's a little bit like leucine is the bricklayer.
Yeah.
So, you're there, you're on, you're ready to go. But if you don't also give the bricklayer bricks, then you're not going to end up with a wall. So you need the leucine to turn the process on, and then you need all the other amino acids to actually build the muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool though. Hey.
It is. I love it. And then it's funny because, you talk about chickens and then you just mentioned whey protein. And there's so much research into, all that with whey protein, and then so much research into chickens. We need to start eating horses and we might actually get some research done.
Well, the thing with chickens is they turn over their generations so fast, so they can make a lot of improvement. But and the other thing with chickens, and we use them a lot in horse nutrition too, is you can actually buy these individual amino acids. So you can spike, for want of a better word, a feed or a supplement with leucine, but if you just add the branched chain aminos in there or just add the leucine in, and then you're not, so say if you bought don't go running out and go, oh, buy a leucine supplement and then feed it with a least cost formulated feed that just says vegetable protein meal on the packet, because you'll have hired the bricklayer but not giving him any bricks or her. So it has to be this whole interplay of, yes, you need to switch the pathway on, but then you also need to give the animal the building blocks it needs to actually build the muscle.
So what does a normal person do when they're looking at their bag of feed going, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a good mother? Am I being Orla and feeding
straw
the wrong thing for 10 days?
Oh, I love your honesty though, Orla. And it's like we've all done this stupid stuff, and I can't tell you how many times I've done stuff with my horses, and then you look back and go, that was so dumb. But it's only
I knew it was dumb, but I was like,
but it's only in hindsight that you can see it in hindsight so clearly, and it does help a lot that we share these experiences. So I love it. Thank you for sharing it. So what does a normal person do? I think it depends what you're trying to achieve. So if you've got a chunky popcorn or a duck and you're going, well, they don't exactly need to build muscle, and you're not actively trying to build muscle, then you don't need to worry about this too much. But if you've got, we've had in the last 12 months a lay, and bringing a lay, so off the track thoroughbred, and we're documenting her first 12 months off the track for the Racing Queensland off the track program. And so I was really conscious of getting some muscle on her. And all I did was actually buy like proper full fat soybean. So when I say proper, you can't feed raw soybean. It has to be heat treated correctly so that it's actually digestible, and it doesn't actually block raw soybean, will block protein digestion in the gut. So it has to be heat treated. So she was on extruded full fat soybean, and 2 cups a day. And it blows me away how fast that built muscle on her. It just was, and she wasn't in, she was in work, but she wasn't in heaps of work. And she would get that usually after she was ridden of an afternoon. She was fed in the afternoon, so she'd generally be ridden and not every day. She'd be ridden and fed the full fat soybean, and it bulked her up so quickly. So you can do that, but I think the most important thing is be really conscious of what protein you're actually getting in your balancer pellet or your feeds. And if you are trying to put muscle on a horse and not necessarily getting the results you would like, go and read your feed bag, see if it says vegetable protein meal, and if it does, go and if your horse can, and the majority of horses do very, very well on soybean, but if they can have soybean, then find a feed that has soybean in it or add it to the diet like we did. And don't also, protein's a real jigsaw puzzle too. So bringing in different sources of protein. So leucine is a beautiful source of protein. Soybean's a beautiful source. Lupins. So, if you wanted to put soybean and lupins or find a feed that has both of those in them, there's lots of, just know what protein, I guess, is going in your feed and avoid the ones that say vegetable protein meal if you're actively trying to put muscle on a horse.
I was also leading for you to say, I'm quite sure in my happy horse, when you go into protein, and actually shows you on the little bar.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Ola's reminding me that we have this whole app that
that does it for you.
Oh, isn't it funny? I'll talk about the science of nutrition all day and go, oh yeah, that's right. We have something that can help you. But it will, and in fact, what we will build into it at some point in the nearish future is a protein quality indicator.
Oh, cool.
So it'll actually look at your feeds for you and go protein quality unknown, protein quality high, protein quality moderate. But yeah, it does. It makes sure that your horse's protein requirement is met, and at the moment, it will show you lysine, because that's what we have published information on, like how much lysine a horse needs. But in the back end, we're collecting data on a whole lot of other amino acids too that at some point we might be able to use because we might have a requirement. But at the moment, we have no other requirement other than lysine. So it comes down to know your feed ingredients. So if you've got a feed that specifies high quality proteins and the lysine level, then you're probably pretty safe that that's going to build muscle. If you've got a feed that says vegetable protein meal and you don't know what that is, even with the lysine content, you don't know whether it's one of these lysines that is not available. So yeah, avoid the ones that say vegetable protein meals if you're trying to put muscle on a horse.
Yep. And then if with an equine dedicated meal, do you just, I don't know, call your feed company and ask?
Yeah. You can.
Like, do you have to, is it something you should worry about, is more my question.
Is the vegetable protein meal?
No, equine dedicated meal.
Oh, equine dedicated meal. I do, I guess. Yeah, because I'm doing what I do. I know the stories of the horses that died from the feed that was contaminated. So I know that it happens. It happens here. It definitely happens in the States. I don't know about Europe. I don't actually know of a situation there personally, and I don't know whether they even use these ingredients anymore. But yeah, it worries me. So yes, I would be asking, if you're not sure about your feed manufacturer, I would be asking them, are you equine only? And if not, do you have any of the medications that are potentially harmful or deadly to the horses on site? And if you do, how do you keep them out of the horse feed? Make sure that they don't end up in there.
That's everyone's homework, to go home and look at the backs of the bags and do some, don't ask ChatGPT, just Google it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Listener question, sort of? Debate, let's call it. She ChatGPT'd this, so it leads in quite well. This particular horse, sort of about it. It's had diarrhea off and on for a long time. He was on a product. It was making a bit of a difference, but not really. Like, there was more to it than a product's ever going to be able to help with it. And then they had been using it continuously. No, I think they had stopped it. Sorry, they brought it back in. Anyway, they changed and used a different product. And allegedly within 3 hours, the diarrhea subsided. And I went, what? And I was like, you know what? We're not going to have this debate. You're going to tell me that I'm wrong anyway, so we'll move past this. Anyway, I spoke to the same person again today, and I was like, so where did this come from? I was like, I'm going to bring it up on the podcast. She goes, oh, well, I read it on the label. And I went, okay, so I'm Googling the label, and I'm like, where on the label? So she's trying to find it, can't find it. And I'm like, come on, where is this scientific evidence come from? She goes, maybe I ChatGPT'd it. And I went, cool. Nerida, how quickly would it take a product to get into a horse's hindgut to prevent diarrhea?
So did it actually work within 3 hours though?
No. Well, this is the
No.
thing. It could, if anything, it would have been the product she was using for the 2 days prior finally starting to take effect.
Yeah.
And she's saying, I gave it to them at 6 o'clock in the morning, and by 9 a.m., it's magically better.
And did it stay better though?
No.
Okay. So it reverted.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a whole lot going on with this horse, but it was my main question that to give her an answer was, how long does it take for a product to get into the hindgut?
Yeah. So to get into the hindgut, to get in and then get out, it's more than a day.
Thank you. But yeah, that's what she was saying, was that it was going to magically, the ChatGPT told her that this product would fix the diarrhea within 3 hours.
The thing that we have to remember though, and that all of us, I think, forget at one point in time or another, is that the stomach is connected to the small intestine, which is connected to the hindgut. They're all connected. So they're essentially all the one thing. But because we talk about them so distinctly, you kind of think, well, you know, something affects the stomach and that's not the hindgut. But they are all connected. So my one little, I never say never with stuff. So, you know, it's possible that it changed something that changed the flow of fluids into and out of the gut somehow. And then that did have an impact in 3 hours. I think it's probably unlikely, but possible. But I don't know how.
No, the two products that she swapped from are the same ingredients. One just has electrolytes and prebiotics in it, and one doesn't. And she went from the one with prebiotics to the one that doesn't have prebiotics.
Okay.
That's the only difference to the two products.
And they both had electrolytes?
No. The one with prebiotics has electrolytes, and the one that doesn't have prebiotics doesn't have electrolytes.
So she changed to one that doesn't have electrolyte?
Yes.
Okay. So your electrolyte will pull water into the gut. Whether just in not giving the horse electrolyte had stopped so much water being pulled into the gut, because if you're pulling water into the small intestine, it'll move really quick into the hindgut. It doesn't play by the same rules that the solids play by. So that's what I mean. Like it's possible, but it's probably not that it fixed the problem. It's probably just shifted, like, you know, the osmotic pull of electrolytes, so just salts in the gut. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be fixing something. It's just that it won't have pulled so much water in there.
Fair. Interesting. But it's gone back to normal anyway. They've had the fecal transplant and the horse is still doing the same thing.
Yeah. So this would be where I'd be saying, you know, what's the fibre base of its diet? Does it have sand in its gut?
There's many questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We both know this person.
We won't. I've got no idea who you were talking about, but we won't go there right now. But I'll follow up in a few weeks' time and see what we can figure out, because I'd love to know what the diet is, and, like, you know, was there any antibiotic use in its history, and what else has gone on with this horse. And the other thing too that I find fascinating is what was its, and most people can't answer this question because most people don't know the mother of their horse, but, you know, what was the mother's microbiome like, and was there any antibiotic use when that foal was in utero? And, you know, there was it was a weanling in Japan the last time I was over there, and had persistent diarrhea its whole life, and they couldn't figure out. It was fed the same as the other, however many, lots of young horses on this farm, and they couldn't get this one right. And I was asking them a lot of questions, and then we got to its mother, and I said, you know, any antibiotic use in the foal when it was very young? They said no. Any antibiotic use in the mother? And they went and looked up her records, and she'd had colic surgery early in pregnancy, and then this foal's come out with a wonky gut. So, you know, if you bought that horse 4 years down the line and it's got diarrhea, you're not going to know that.
Well, no, this one in particular was a weanling. And you could look up the mare because it's on a stud farm.
Yeah, okay, now I know who you're talking about.
Now you're with me. For God's sake.
But yeah, so it would be, and particularly on broodmares, so yeah, that its mother will have been a broodmare at least, I'd imagine, once
times.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really, really interesting to go and have a look at its mother's gut and its gut. But yeah.
One day.
But yeah, it's potentially the electrolytes.
Interesting.
In that situation.
I'll have to send her the episode and say, you might be right. I'm still claiming you're wrong, but I'll give it to her.
Funny. Well, on that, we've talked a lot about running poos in this episode.
Have you done an actual full episode on it yet?
No, I haven't. But I
think we've touched on it a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. And I must do one. There's a cool vet over in the States who had one of these horses that had free fecal water for years. And then we've brought in this, additional fibres and horses heaps better. So I'd love to get her on and do a case study because it's just fascinating. But if you do have a horse that's struggling with diarrhea, go and grab a bunch more fibres, get lots of different fibres, forages into its gut and just see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah, cross your fingers.
Yeah, perfect.
And let us know if it works. Well, thank you very, very much, Orla. And
it's all right.
We will catch you all in the next episode.
Alrighty.
See ya.
All right, bye.
If you'd like to know more about the My Happy Horse virtual equine nutritionist, you can head on over to myhappy.horse. And also, while you're there, check out the Dr. Nerida AI, which is me in AI format. And that version of me is happy to answer your questions about horse nutrition 24/7. Thanks again, and we'll catch you soon.